Thank you once again, and as I get set to invite on stage our panelists for the next interactive session, I'd like to request all of you to bear with us for a couple of minutes as we change the setup for our panel discussion. Till then, let me introduce to you our discussion, which again is going to be a very interactive session. Our panel discussion is going to be on entrepreneurial ecosystem, the ease of doing business, where the key pointers of discussion will be policy changes, latest initiatives from the government, along with regulation, infrastructure, tax initiatives, and a lot more. Once again, after about 50 minutes of panel discussion, we'd like to make it an open house, and we'd like to request all of you to please keep your questions to one per person so that many of us get a chance to ask more. And let us now put our hands together as I welcome on stage our moderator for the session, Mr. Mrityunjay Kapoor, Partner and Head of Risk Consulting, KPMG. Let's put our hands together. And our apologies, please bear with us a couple of minutes till we do the final setup. Thank you for your patience. Let's once again put our hands together for our moderator, Mr. Mrityunjay Kapoor, Partner and Head of Risk Consulting, KPMG. And we'll just mic up our panelists as well, please. Let's also put our hands together as I invite on stage our panelists, Mr. Vikas, Bahl, founder of Phantom Films. I'd also like to welcome Mr. Navin Raheja, CMD Raheja Developers. A warm welcome to Padmaja Ruparel, President, Indian Angel Investors Network. Let's put our hands together as I welcome Dr. Sunil Shukla, Director, Entrepreneurship Development Institute of India. And a warm welcome to Mr. Riyaaz Amlani, Founder and CEO, Impresario Hospitality Private Limited. Let's put our hands together as our panelists step on the dais. Let's really put our hands together. I promise you good health. I don't know how many of you are aware of this, but clapping your hands together leads to blood circulation, which means healthier us, which means brighter faces and brilliant smiles. And I promise you a fantastic session in exchange for a round of applause. All yours, Mr. Kapoor.
Great, thank you for the opportunity, and I've got a very interesting panel with me, though the topic is really heavy, and we're talking about regulations and taxes and whatnot that the government is planning. But I think what's happened in the last couple of years is we've seen that at least from a ranking perspective, we've become better. We are 130 in the ease of doing business. And that's up from 4 places from what it was a couple of years back. What we've also seen is that the reports say that you can now set up a business in 29 days, and way back in 2004 it really took you 129 days or 124 days to actually set it up. Also, what the government has done is that they're talking about a spate of reforms in terms of setting up infrastructure for entrepreneurs. I think there's a policy expected to come out in January, which will define or which will put in place an ecosystem that startups can use and efficiently access both infrastructure, funding, and maybe even get concessions as far as taxation goes. But since we have the industry here, I think it's important to figure out how it really impacts them on a day-to-day basis and when they run their businesses, and also as they start, and how does the ecosystem actually either enable them, or is it that these companies are really going despite of the ecosystem. So I'll start with Riyaaz. And I think, food is a very, very interesting industry and possibly the largest contributor to the GDP above retail and insurance. As I was doing some research, I think what it does is you end up taking some 40 to 50 licenses to get to open an establishment. You end up, possibly waiting for 4 or 5 months before getting all those licenses in place. In some places like Delhi, etc., it takes up to a year to get a liquor license. And then you have the whole scheme of dealing with the various authorities which come one after the other. And there is a demand for a single window clearance. There is some demand in terms of how the taxation should work. So what is your view and how easy do you find it in terms of setting up businesses in India?
I don't know about other businesses which can be set up in 29 days, but it at least takes 6 to 7 months if you're lucky to set up a restaurant. We have, depending on the state and city and municipality that you're operating in, it could take you anywhere between 28 to about 39 different NOCs and licenses just to be able to sell a sandwich. So it's a little bizarre. There's a lot of work that needs to be done to make it easy to do restaurants. As Vituj said, we are the third highest employment generator after insurance and retail. We are a 4,80,000 crore business. We are an immense contributor to VAT, service tax as well as excise. I think we are the only business which pays all three. And we get a sense that somehow restauranting is viewed as a semi-legal business, and it's almost like a luxury, like alcohol and cigarettes, and it should be taxed very heavily. But our opinion is restaurants are like infrastructure. They really needed to be promoted. We generate the highest amount of employment. We're very intensive. Each restaurant would employ anywhere between 50 and 60 people. So it has a tremendous contribution, and we have no problem with the taxes as long as it just becomes easy to do business.
Right. So, and recently these foreign chains are coming into India, and you see more and more of those coming in, and with Burger King which came in, and then Starbucks. And I think somewhere, when you go back, they seemed to, there was an impression that for them to set up their operations, it was fairly smooth. And I think despite the current infrastructure and the kind of requirements that you have, essentially the civic bodies came together and really helped them out to make sure that they were able to launch. So is that very specific to certain brands, or is that you see that as a change in attitude that is happening?
Unfortunately not. We haven't really seen people really rolling out the red carpet. If you need to set up a restaurant and a bar, you need to get a character certificate from the police saying that you're a good moral fiber. You could open up an ordnance factory without using a single police permission, but you need 3 separate police permissions just to open up a restaurant. So it's not easy, and the problems are compounded by the fact that it's different for every municipality. It's not the same. So, I mean, the Bombay laws, the greater Bombay laws are different from the Bombay suburbs, from New Bombay. Pune is completely different. Hyderabad is different. Each state is completely different. So there's no uniform policy. And right. So your business model goes for a complete toss from state to state, city to city. And what is really needed is an actual uniform policy. The trouble which we have is we don't come under a single ministry. We report separately to excise, separately to VAT, separately to police. So we come under a gamut of different authorities, and quite often, like there's a food license, right? So you need to get an FSSAI license, which is a Food Safety National Act, but at the same time you need to get a health license from the local municipality. And it's the same concern, which is food hygiene, but it's repeated. And the problem is we have to renew these licenses every year. And if you have to renew these licenses every year, you have to apply every year again. Yeah, you just have to keep applying and applying. So right. There's always somebody every day dealing with some government department or the other in a restaurant, which is just a waste of time.
And when we talk about getting rid of corruption, and I know that Delhi has done a few, taken a few steps to make it easy. for example, applying of licenses and giving you some sort of a single window clearance that you need to apply for one and you can do the rest parallelly. Do you think that is working and other states could follow suit, or is that more on paper right now?
So we are making a lot of headway, at least the governments are listening in Delhi and Maharashtra.
Right.
We are asking to move from licenses to registrations, and we are asking for the whole process to be done online and renewals to be done for a 5-year or a 3-year period, because it doesn't make sense applying for the same license again and again. We got positive feedback from the governments. Nothing concrete has happened yet, but we are very, very hopeful.
And one, last point was in terms of ensuring, food safety and that entire piece. And we know how some of the cases have happened in consumer goods or, packaged food, but also the restaurant industry and at large, considering it's, there's a unorganized sector as well, and there are smaller, larger, bigger players. So how does the government really get over that entire fact of hygiene? And one of the reasons why when you speak with the government is they want to do all the licensing and inspections because they're not sure that how well the hygiene is maintained. And despite all of that, we see some places are not as good as the others. So how do you get around that system of creating consistent quality which is in line with the food safety norms world over?
So for example, if you were to open up a restaurant in, let's say, Turkey, you need 3 licenses. You need to be registered for VAT, you need to have a food safety license, and you need to register for a business, right? And basically that's what you really need. You need to know that it's safe, so you're not polluting. Your food is hygienic, there's fire safety, but other than that, all other licenses and requirements are redundant. The FSSAI, the new act that has come, is fairly comprehensive. Yeah. It covers all the bases, not just looks after the hygiene factors within the restaurant, but also the ingredients that you're sourcing. So it's a fairly comprehensive act, but this overlapping of archaic laws which were framed in 1948, 1953, 1956 needs to be reviewed and reviewed very quickly.
Sure. So coming over to a more interesting, well, not more, but maybe far more exciting business of films. And we've got Vikas here, and I think what will be interesting for us to know is how do you feel about just, there are issues in terms of getting approvals, going out of India to shoot in locations, because sometimes that is much easier to do so. There are, of course, taxation issues, and I'm not going to get into that as of this point of time, of how do you deal with capital expenditure, revenue expenditure, can abandoned films be treated as revenue expenditure. So all that is one important part. But just in terms of operationalizing this entire effort, how do you see that happening in India, and what do you think are the big constraints that you face?
We actually laugh about it internally. I have a director in-house, Anurag Kashyap, who only makes films in slums. So I told him last time, even if you're making a movie in a slum, next time we're going to UK to shoot it. Because I think for us the process is almost endless. We don't know ever that we have finished the process that we're supposed to finish. So when you go out there and you say, okay, I'm going to shoot in Bandra at the Signal today. So okay, these are the 20 things I'm doing, but what you're also prepared for is the 20 things that are going to come when you're at the shoot. So we're almost always prepared with 3 boys who are out there with cash, waiting there. Because I think what has happened over time is, more than us trying to figure out what are the processes we need to follow to go and do a shoot, the other people have kind of figured out the processes that will never be accomplished. So it's like you're constantly battling, say, terrorism in some manner. Because what you're doing is you're trying to just figure out what to do, but they're trying to figure out what is it that they'll never be able to do. So this is the way we'll go out there and make money of these people. So we're happy people, so we still go and enjoy our shoot and we have a great time. But if I was to take it in a serious way, I think it's terrible, the conditions in which we shoot, the provisions that are given, the girls shooting at the shoot who will probably not even have a vanity van to go because you don't know where to park a vanity van and no one's thinking about where it should be parked. So it's not a good, and I think Bombay I'm taking as an example because I think that should be the example of how the rest of the country should create the environment for shooting. But if that doesn't do, then the others are just going to make their subplots and find their own little ways of doing it. So this is not just a problem for us. I just also think that India is such a huge hub for revenue for shooting from around the world, but it is almost dead. I don't think anyone thinks, other than the fact that they want to come and shoot Slumdog Millionaire here, that this is the place where I need to go and shoot. And forget the fact that there should be subsidies to call them. There should just be basic infrastructure for them to come here and enjoy shooting here. So I don't expect anyone else to. We are usually just running away to go and have a good time and do a good shoot and come back.
But do you think that cities outside of Mumbai are trying hard, and keep hearing about it, to create an much more effective ecosystem, to provide some sort of licensing, simple, effective way of coming and doing a shoot? Is Delhi emerging as one?
Yes.
And do you think that really matters? Because despite, I know Delhi and some of the cities in the south have tried hard, but has it really changed anything?
I think shooting anywhere outside Bombay is only getting better. I think Delhi is I shot a film in Delhi and I thought it was much better. I was shooting in the middle of Lajpat Nagar market, and I think it was just the willpower of those people trying to show that, okay, there is something good happening here and you should come and shoot here. So the cops were helpful, everyone was. So there was a need to pull in some of the shooting to other places. We recently had that summit in Goa, where I think Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, UP, they're all attempting to at least attract attention towards their state for a better shooting environment. But I still think that because as just pure labor and skill set, those states are not ready. So Bombay has to be the example. So for example, Delhi did try and make Delhi a huge hub in Noida for shooting about 10 years back.
Yes.
It just didn't work because of the skill set requirement in Delhi, which was not the same in Bombay. So because of pure skill set, the industry didn't shift bases over the base over here. But so if we were to actually plan it well and use that skill set and use the whole country as a hub to shoot, there could be an easier way to shoot.
And just moving on and to say theatre or even looking at certain events, and I know I'm possibly digressing a little. So there are of course a whole spew of licenses that are required, and we just had a Bryan Adams concert which didn't get a no objection certificate in time, and then I think Delhi has started creating, I think they've created 23 venues where you don't need a license, for example, or they are pre-approved and you can get in, do a lot of the entertainment there. Now, how does that impact, and especially when you look at theatre, or if you look at programs like Beauty and the Beast, which is now being fairly well publicized. So is the ecosystem around that improving? Because that could have somewhat of as a rub-on effect in terms of skills, talent.
I think at a basic level, forget the fact what taxes are, what permissions are, any of that. I think at a basic level, as a country, do we think entertainment is something that should go out to people or not? Now, whether that's theatre, whether that's music, whether that's concerts, movies, anything, I think there is a basic apprehension, like we said about food, that entertainment means just go and somehow ruin it out for them. Now, whether it could be a tax or it could be late night permission, I think there is a resistance to any sort of entertainment versus someone at one point thinking people in this country need entertainment. They need to go out. They need to have a great weekend. They work extremely hard. I think people in our country work very, very hard, much harder than most other places that I visit. And if they need a basic good life and entertainment, then how do we give it to them?
Yeah.
And if I think that approach comes as a DNA into the country, everything else will follow from that. Now, whether it's a single land permission, whether it's a whole night concert, whether it's a full weekend where people are partying and enjoying, I think there is a resistance to it. And if that's taken away, or that is seen as this is what people deserve, everything else will follow from that.
Fantastic. So what's the new project that you're working on since?
I think I should go and make Shandar 2 maybe. Since no one saw 1.
Great. Fantastic. So Navin, just coming to you in terms of real estate, I think obviously that's a hot topic. It gets hotter by the day in terms of how we are growing, what's happening. And I think there is lots said about the consumer protection. that is coming into place, and you have the new bill that has come in which largely focuses on protection. But I think there is a large part in terms of the other side of the story as to what do the builders or developers go through, and what are the reforms that we are looking at or are we speaking at. Because if you see some of the statistics, I mean, of course, you need some 40 to 70 approvals, to just get your project going, and that's possibly after getting the land and acquiring that and making sure that the title is clear. And then it takes approximately 3 to 4 years before you can even launch your project once you've acquired land, and then the construction cost, the interest cost, all of that piles up. So it will be great to hear from you as to how this industry is moving, and is the government on the right track to, with the real estate bill, is it providing you the right sort of a leeway to provide better real estate infrastructure?
You started this discussion by using a word, enabling ecosystem. I would say that the actual word should have been disabling ecosystem. When we start a project, it takes almost 2 to 4 years, and who pays for that? Developers or builders are not the people who grow money out of air, They build the pricing based upon what their total costs are piling up to, and what is the total risk involved in that. So it is because of that the pricing is relatively much higher than the affordability level of the actual consumer. Any business, in the previous discussion I was listening to, any business that actually starts from the bottom of the pyramid, and that starts from the consumer's acceptability only. Now here in our country, people, as the prices build up because of holding cost, cost of money, cost of getting clearances, and the risk, allied risk involved with that. So the price touches to that level where the ultimate consumer, we load it to the consumer and the consumer is not able to pay. And here is the inventory pile up, you have a vicious cycle around you. Regulatory Act is hand whom and for what? You won't give us clearances for 3-4 years, or you, even if we manage to get all the clearances, every agency is looking at opportunity to somehow poke their nose and come to poach. They are not there to help you. They are there to find a way how to extort money out of you. Everybody. So when they deliberately, I don't know whether they deliberately do it or whether it is by ignorance or whether it is by inefficiency of various agencies. In our Government of India, environment clearance for building permits generally says 30% green area should be given in a group house. They will issue you a letter with that. The National Building Code says 15%. The state builds norms on that. Now, practically, it is practically impossible to achieve 30% because then you have to go vertical. And vertical, then there you have Airport Authority of India watching you. So, you have to devise methods which are practically implementable. So, if you get your environment clearance, then you go to the town planning will clear if the total green area is above 15%, they'll clear your project. Despite the fact that there is a condition of 30% in the environment clearance. Now after once you have cleared and you are halfway, the environment people will come and say, I had given you letter for 30%, you are making it on 20%. So you stop the work. So there are conflicting reports. Definition of even the carpet or built up areas between one ministry also, between, you know, between service tax and between income tax is different. So you have to, while serving, qualifying and, you know, clearance for one, you are stuck in the other. So here you have to manage after that.
So, and you know, when we were, and this again, just
So-
some thoughts on what managing means. I believe there's a
So
first-
they
first
are
take
leaving,
on the managing part as well.
they are leaving everything there to manage. And that is where we are not able to deliver projects. Now, if the developer is not able to deliver project on time, he is now to be hanged. So he is the person responsible. The people who didn't give clearances or who stopped midway for their own selfish interests, they are not responsible. So we are leading to a country where it is only the political appeasement of Aam Aadmi Party without any logics, whether the things can happen or the things cannot happen, whether you can, you know, you have put 70% money will be going to be put in escrow account, will be used for construction. Now tell me one thing, in Delhi or in Mumbai or in any other metropolitan cities, the cost of land is 80 to 90% and the cost of construction is hardly 10 to 20%. If 70% of all the money collected is put and project takes 5 years to complete, that means one developer cannot do second project till the time the money gets unlocked, because what should be there? You have to complete the project by putting balance 10 to 20% of the money. You should escrow the money which is required to complete the project. You should not be escrowing the money which can actually generate more housing and more supply, you know, so that the prices can be better stabilized. You are holding on to that capital for 5 years, that means there is a capital cost, carrying cost of money for next 5 years. So who is going to get loaded on the normal customers only ultimately. So these are regulatory act. These are very, very simple things which we try to explain to them, to all the bureaucratic people, to all the political system. Please try to understand. You should be escrowing the money which is required to complete the project. But here, if they put that word, there will be lot of uproar in the, you know, parliament. Lot of people will start accusing here and there for their own interpretation and political definition of being pro people or pro builders.
But is there, do you see any, you know, especially in terms of clearances, and one part is...
Clearances, they have not made them accountable. We have been fighting for it since last, it is developers only who wanted a regulator.
Yes.
And wanted to get out of this multiple clearances mechanism, wanted there should be a clear definition of respective obligations, be it customer, be it government, be it the people, developers. There should be well defined clear obligations and a quick and fast settlement mechanism. That is how we were NAREDCO, I as being first president of NAREDCO and then later on being chairman of NAREDCO also, now chairman advisory council as well as on FICCI chairman, on, you know. So we have been talking about all this, but what has ultimately come out is more of a political will. You have to create a mechanism where there can be a fast track resolution to anyone's issues, where we can create more stocks, where more supplies.
Is the Singapore model, which is, you know, where you get a 3 to 4 months as far as clearances go?
You can get it here also.
Is that so?
We can get it here also. We can get it online. It is very simple. The entire process has been given, made, and explained in not less than, I think, 40 meetings which I had in the central government and in the state governments, that you can put it online. When you can file returns and audit accounts through consultants, you can create 3 panel of approved consultants, well trained, who certify your title, who certify your ability to execute the project, who certify your building plans according to the norms which are whether national building code or the state norms, and you upload them on the site. Simultaneously uploaded, it goes to all those 40, 50 clearance tables wherever they have to say anything in parallel mode.
Sure.
And they are told to revert back if they find any fault with those certifications, and you get the clearance permit and you can start your work. This will lead to more than, I think, 40 to 50% housing stock and real estate stock getting cheaper.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And timely delivery as well.
Absolutely. Because the as you crunch the time of development, you're obviously reducing the cost as well. One last point was with this entire REIT structure that has come in and which was to enable funding for the sector. Is that really working? Are you seeing funding coming in? I mean, one, of course, we've been through a economic turmoil globally as well as in India, and I think we're coming out of that or are out of that. But is that actually showing results on ground?
This cannot show results because right now REIT is for income yielding assets. So income yielding assets, wherever they have been, they are already leveraged, either to financial institutions or through any other method. Right now, creating that income yielding further stock will need a lot of investment, and that can come through other channels, whether it is through a local funding or through banking channels or through FDIs.
Sure.
And I think the right course is that they should allow external commercial borrowings also, number one. Number two, they should, like Indians can buy outside anywhere a property. We in India nobody from outside can buy property here. We have all choked so many channels which are practically done. Now here, I think Indians are buying more outside India. That is why this real estate is suffering also, than buying in India itself.
Yeah.
This is unfortunate, and it is being hand-holded also by giving more limits to take out money out of India.
But I think they curbed the limits also. If you saw, the limits came down from what they originally said.
What we should allow is that at least we can allow, limited property areas where you can buy properties if you have any issues.
Sure.
So the investments can come. You have to make Indian economy an enabler. And now looking at the schemes like mass housing also, let me tell you that. Slum redevelopment, mass housing. You talk about all these things, giving housing to all by 2022. But if you start talking people giving 10,000 rupees EMI a month, can a slum dweller pay that? His income is total income in which he is to survive his children, he is to eat, he is to get clothing, bedding, everything. If he is earning only 8,000 rupees a month, can he pay 8,000 or equivalent amount more than this for servicing the EMI for buying a house? So you should look at it. World Bank reports say that you cannot spare more than 30%. So you have to build your policies on through the bottom of the pyramid by inclusive participation of the actual users. Whether these people, if I create my policies, they should be for the people.
No, absolutely.
Enabling them.
Absolutely.
Not sitting in the tables, in the government, and you decide on certain parameters and thrust it upon the people and then say things are not moving, more and more slums are getting created, more and more illegal colonies are getting created. But have you gone and asked a slum dweller how much you can spare?
No, I think that's an interesting point, and I agree. We are somewhere at around, there's again throwing numbers because that's what I do is 183rd in terms of our ability to get construction permits globally. So way down the value chain as far as construction goes. So I'll just
we have to be practical, we have to be wise, we have to be knowing our country, we have to be knowing our people.
Yeah.
We have to make things happen and let the people work. We have to allow them to work than to find how to extort out of them.
So moving on, Padmaja, to you, and I think that's another interesting space. And when you look at startups, 2005 onwards, over 100,000 jobs, 300,000 indirect jobs. You've got some real big success stories of Flipkart, Snapdeal, all of these being big global stories actually. And I believe 8% of those 1 billion plus startups are from India across the globe. So what do you feel, and there is a policy, we'll speak to Sunil about it as well, in terms of how this entire entrepreneur or startup ecosystem is functioning. And what do we have to do to make it robust, since it's the government's the biggest driver that the PM is pushing for. We want innovation, we want everything to fall in place, considering all we've heard right now.
No, thank you, Mrityunjay. I think we are in the startup ecosystem, we are in very exciting times, I have to say that. So, over the last 10 years that I have seen, when we began Indian Angel Network, we were the first angel group in the country, and now we are globally the largest. We've seen a complete sea change in what we are seeing in the startup ecosystem. We used to see 1 or 2 investments in the first year, and with great difficulty. Let me share that. This financial year, I think IAN itself will invest in over 50 companies. That's the rate that we're going. Second thing that what has really happened is entrepreneurship has completely become a choice of career. It has no longer remained the last option in life. And I say this because I went through this myself. When I wanted to become an entrepreneur, my dad said, "Aur kuch nahi mil raha hai tumhe." You can't be a doctor, you can't be a chartered accountant, and you want to become an entrepreneur, not even a politician. It was almost coming to that. So I think this has completely changed the perception. And to great extent, I think the new India and this whole entrepreneurship has been born out of the IT industry, because it was the first generation middle class entrepreneurs who actually took garage to IPO companies. And that has completely created new icons where our younger generation is looking at entrepreneurship. Today we are seeing India, and if I'm really very proud to be saying this, because we were nowhere on the map of startups. It used to be the Valley, East Coast, then Israel, Europe, and perhaps Singapore. It was like that. Today India is the fastest growing startup ecosystem in the world, honestly. And we have entrepreneurs from the Valley coming to set up businesses here. We have business leaders going and heading up new age companies then, and I don't need to give names. All of them have an Indian origin CEO. So we are in a very, very different scenario, and we are very excited. To come to your point, Mrityunjay, actually, taking off from what Sanjeev said in the previous session was very, very relevant to what I want to say, is you have to listen to the customer. And I apply that also to the government, in fact, because where we are generating, we as business owners or as people who are generating revenue, we are clients to the government. We are creating the tax revenues for him. The second pain point that the government has, which we are actually helping to create, is employment generation, as you said, right? So I think it's very important to understand for the policymakers that whether it's startups or established businesses, what they are doing for the country and what they are doing there. So what is happening now, and for the first time in many, many years that I'm seeing, is the government is opening up, and we have this whole Startup India, this whole ease of doing business, interfacing, which I think Riyaaz mentioned when he was talking about at least trying to talk to industry to say what can happen. From the startup ecosystem, we are seeing a lot of action. There is a whole startup policy. I think mid-January there'll be we are discussing on almost a weekly basis what is a startup, define a startup, what are the enablers that can be created, what are the different policy changes, and it's not only happening from a DIPP or a Ministry of Entrepreneurship, it's happening from CBDT, Ministry of Finance, whether it is SIDBI, whether it is SEBI, RBI. I think I've had meetings with everybody, and I think first thing is to at least acknowledge that something needs to be done. I think that's the first step. The second is to actually get down to different policies and see what can be changed. Let me give you just a flavor of what are the kind of discussions that we are happening. There are many, many discussions. Each policy is being sort of relooked, and that's very encouraging for us. If I look at it from a startup perspective, apart from things of ease of doing business, like, you know, incorporating companies quickly, allowing companies to close quickly, all of those are par for the course. I think two of the things that I would like to bring is Companies Law 2013 is a pain. In a single word. And for a startup, if I just take just one clause over there, which is Section 42, Rule 14(2)(c), which is mandatory for investors or shareholders to have 2,000 shares at least, because you need it at par for 20,000 rupees. That sort of messes up a startup completely. There is no startup at an early stage with no collateral, probably no revenue, that a single investor is going to put 1 crore. It's a huge risk which very few investors are likely to take. And it makes it we've gone around it, but why should we go around it? Why can't we have a simplistic process there? And we did have that. I also acknowledge why this has come in for very, very specific reasons and some misuse that happened. But the reality is I mean, we have to understand that the majority of Indian population is not dishonest, right? So there's a majority that is getting impacted. That's one. Secondly, startups have a cash crunch. They are always under stress on cash flow. So a simple thing like MAT, for people who don't know, MAT is a tax that is on book profits, not on real profits, that is levied. All that it needs to be done is for a certain period, let's say 3 years, startups do not make profit. That's the reality. They are investing. Can we not just ring fence the startups, and there can be various ways to parameterize them to say they don't pay MAT because they're not making profits. The reality is they're not making profits. Just if you're not making profits, why are you paying taxes? And therefore you're eating into your capital in some ways. So I'm just giving very simple things that could help actually grow something which we are doing anyway. I mean, if we are investing so heavily and there are new startups, and every startup that grows is actually creating a new job. It's not replacement, it's augmentation, and that needs to be understood. So that's from the entrepreneur perspective. But startups are not going to grow without funding. Okay, and we need to understand this from a very different perspective. Let me give you example of the US, which is the most entrepreneurial, startup-friendly ecosystem that we know of. In a specific year, and I'm giving you ballpark numbers, 25 billion is invested in 5,000 companies by VCs, venture capital funds. In the same period, angels, which are HNIs, which are high net worth individuals who are investing their disposable wealth, invest in 50,000 companies with 26 billion. So angels are investing higher than VCs, number one. Number two, they are investing almost, let's say, $500,000 per company, whereas VCs are investing 10 times that at about, say, 5 million, right? But the biggest factor that needs to be understood is that only 10% of the companies are moving to the next stage. So HNIs or angels, who are investing their personal income, are actually seeing failure in 90% of the companies that they are investing. Now that's a risk that this startup ecosystem needs to acknowledge, and people are doing this. Today in India, when we started, believe me, angel investing did not exist. When I started off IEN, I almost had to explain the concept of angel investing, and I had a question from a very wealthy billionaire who said, investing to samajh mein aaya, what is the religious part of angel? Okay, so that's where we started. Today we have Eco Times and Mint and all of these papers actually doing a great job of splashing startups and angel investing across 2 pages. That's where we've reached as a concept. And this needs to be encouraged because this is high risk money, personally invested, and there is no government say in it. This is post-tax money that individuals are investing. Let's value that. But how are we valuing it from a policy perspective? Again, let me give you an example. So when you invest or trade on publicly listed companies, right, when you buy on the public shares, you are paying 15% long-term capital gains and 0% on short-term, I'm so sorry, 0% on long-term capital gains and 15% on short-term capital gains. Also remember, the long-term period, short-term to long-term period in publicly listed companies is 1 year. Okay? Now let me bring you to unlisted companies, which is where startups are. We are paying investors, if they make a gain, and remember 90% of them are likely to fail, keep that in mind. We are paying 33% on short term and 20% on long term, and the long term period is 3 years. So do you see the anomaly that investors are investing in higher risk companies and paying higher tax versus lower risk company which are publicly listed and they've grown to a different level, they've put in all the risk mitigations and all of that, but they're paying almost 0% tax. So a simple thing of saying not giving benefit to angels or VCs or unlisted company shareholders, investors, but just aligning it with the publicly listed companies would give so much more money coming in for startups. I mean, you have a startup, right? It's not easy to raise money, and if there are people who are willing, who have the psyche to invest, who have the money to invest, and who are willing to take that high risk, why not encourage it by just aligning the tax structures? And it makes sense to my mind. So these are little things that can happen. My belief in this, in the current ecosystem and in the government's initiatives is really that I think it will move. I hope my belief, I am not too jaded in life, and I hope my belief does work. There are a lot of people engaged. I mean, SEBI has come up with various things, the SME exchange, the institutional trading platform, the angel fund structures. We are talking about ring fencing startups so that they get a lot of benefits which are not detrimental or not reducing tax collections, but just right shifting tax collections.
No, absolutely.
Right?
I think.
So I think these are things that I think we can bring to play.
Sure.
And I personally believe that we cannot build businesses today with yesterday's policies for tomorrow's customers. I really believe we can't do that.
Yeah.
We need to be looking at our customers very differently.
So I think just, you're absolutely right in terms of funding seems to be the biggest challenge today, and for various reasons as you've described, be it the tax rates or be it, how the access to funds or just the education that the investors have. And I think one of the things is also that when you have startups, they're more worried about collateral that they need to invest in rather than, the same example that you were giving, looking at customers. So that investment or that money is possibly not spent in understanding the market dynamics. And in the case of, say, your case of 48 Fitness, I think while you were being asked those questions of how your 1200 odd subscribers or operate, I think the fact that you need to put investments in that area of startups is a very big factor. And what we see is most of the startups actually first focus on building some sort of land, property, collateral to figure out how to secure themselves and to secure a further loan that they can take. And how do you see that transitioning? Because that's a big factor for a success.
So, I look at it in two perspectives. I think there are startups and there are businesses that are built on collateral, building equipment, machinery, land, and there is money that government banks or PSU banks are sort of lending, right? And those are that is collateralized funding that is coming. Over there, I do believe that there could be improvement because it's hugely delayed. The whole approval process, the deployment process, and to me, funding delayed is funding denied for a startup at least. It's too early in its maturity to be able to withstand that delay. But there are the new age startups, where do not have collaterals, right? And that is where a lot of this risk money is going, which is where angels and VCs are coming. But what we are also telling the government is to tell the PSU banks or enable a policy by which a lot of the priority lending can leverage personal investments done by investors. So if I am putting in my own money, my personal tax-paid money into a startup and saying that, hey, this is a good team, I'm going to do the best diligence if it's my money. There's nobody who can do a better diligence than me for my money, right? And I'm a domain expert, at least I understand that space. I think the government or the PSU banks or the officers, whoever it may be, needs to leverage that knowledge and domain understanding and the personal money to open up some of the debt lending that can happen. And we have actually architected with SIDBI a convertible which leverages IAN money that we put into startups.
Sure.
And that is what we are trying to do. And the second thing which we've sort of extended our hand to your point, Mrityunjay, which we find is debt providers are obviously not domain experts or people who can take the risk, right? I mean, that's the nature of the business. So we have sort of said, can we go and help train your officers to say, what do we do? How do we look at businesses? What diligence can we do? What can we provide to help startups get the next level of working capital money?
Sure.
Does that answer you?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. And Sunil, finally to you, I think, you've heard from everybody and you're in the seat where you're actually defining policy. And so we've heard about the Companies Act. So actually, we ran a survey with over 200 startups. 41% said that the Companies Act is really difficult to follow and with all the compliances that are there. Actually, and 83% ended up saying that they needed infrastructure for plug and play. And then there were other issues in terms of single window clearances and making sure that the taxation policy works in a manner where you ring fence it or you link it with some sort of financial parameters to make it more efficient. So your thoughts on what the government is doing, what you as a think tank are doing, and what's in the horizon, because next year I'm hoping that the policy will come out for entrepreneurship.
Thank you, Mrityunjay. In fact, we also have been waiting for that policy to come. EDI was party to the development of draft policy, which we had submitted long back to the last government. And also, we have given our further inputs. And we are hoping that policy to come. So for your specific question regarding that new Companies Act is concerned, I also have a feeling that mixed response is there. While one-person company, people are thinking it might be of help to them. But more than that, I would say that new age entrepreneurs are going for LLP kind of structure. It suits them relatively in a better manner. Coming back to the original issue of doing business, while it is heartening to know that doing business index has improved, but there are equal concerns. In the last report, one of the strengths of India was access to credit for entrepreneurs, getting credit, which has gone down substantially from 36th rank in the last report to 42 in the current one. And this certainly is one of the issues, while Indian Angel Network of Ms. Ruparel, Padmaja is certainly helping, and which is providing necessary support to a lot of startup entrepreneurs, but a lot more to be done. We say that we would like entrepreneurs to start businesses as fast as they can, as soon as they can. We have vision that our rank improves to 50 in next 2 years or so, but if that has to be achieved, lot more has to be done. While we are focusing only on reducing the number of days, number of procedures from 29 days or 14 procedures to lesser procedures, so that we can start our businesses in 7-8 days or 1 day, which I heard somewhere our Prime Minister telling, like Singapore. It requires a lot of efforts. Equally difficult is closing down a business. If you close down a business, in worst case, or in most of the cases I would say, it takes about 8 to 10 years. You can correct me. But things are certainly on the better side. I would agree with Ms. Ruparel that there are greener pastures for entrepreneurs, startups, ecosystem. Lots of things are coming. As an academician and researcher, I would say that the kind of students we are receiving today, they are much more informed. They are making a conscious decision of being an entrepreneur rather than one of the last career choices which earlier it used to about 10 to 15 years ago. Let me take this opportunity to cite another very important research report, Global Entrepreneurship Monitor. It's a forum created by Babson and London Business School in 1999. India participated in first 2 cycle, and then there was a gap of about 10 years. EDI together with ISP and IMT, we started in 2012, and we have certain yardsticks, certain important parameters on which this ecosystem could be assessed. As per the recent 2014 data that is available, 2014 data, it is based on 2013-2014. So at the time when the transition was happening at the central government level, there are certain things like cultural and social norms that have improved, physical and social infrastructure has improved, commercial professional infrastructure has improved, and other very important indicator is post-school entrepreneurial education and training that has improved in the country. But at the same time, basic school entrepreneurial education and training, it is one of the laggards for creating entrepreneurial ecosystem. While in developed countries there is some sort of orientation awareness like junior achievement program of US, UK, they also have introduced how to orient our children right from the very beginning for inculcating entrepreneurial values, etc. Taxes and bureaucracy are other issues which need to be addressed. And during the same period, 13-14, when India slipped from 9.9 to 6.6 in entrepreneurial activity index, the other 2 countries of BRICS, that is Brazil and China, they improved. China improved from 15 to 15.53 from 14, and Brazil 17.23 from about 17. So there has been significant improvement in these 2 countries, while we have been more or less either stagnant or we have gone down on several indicators. So far, various players in the entire ecosystem of entrepreneurship development, I would say that there is definitely an awareness. DST is there, Government of India, Department of Science and Technology, they have a lot of interventions. On technology business incubator front itself, they have supported more than 70 TBIs by establishing them on educational campuses. There are private incubators also, these are operational. So awareness is there, but as an educational institution, there are some of our concern which we would like to highlight on this forum. If you look at accreditation agencies of the government, whether it is NAC or AICT or any other, placement and the salary package is still one of the most important criteria for ranking of businesses. And unfortunately, there is no mechanism developed by them or even by other leading publications to rate institutions based on their contribution towards actually producing entrepreneur and the kind of companies they have started and the employment generated or investment made. So yardstick also need to be changed, or at least there has to be some initiatives on this front. And since Economic Times is a very, very credible media house and much credit goes to them also, at least I always eagerly wait for that Sunday ET magazine which highlights success stories of entrepreneurs. I am sure that you will certainly consider this issue, and ranking of the institution should be based on what they are doing, what kind of ecosystem, what kind of policy inputs that they are providing for entrepreneurship development and strengthening the overall environment for entrepreneurship. This is also one of the issues I thought. And another thing that I would like to bring here, while we are talking of entrepreneurship development, there are a number of institutions. There are 4 national institutions including EDI, there are about 13 or 14 state level institutions, there are a number of NGOs. According to an estimate, about 300 to 400 NGOs are involved in some sort of income generating activity. Everybody may not be equally capable and competent. But we have this institutional infrastructure available. How do we utilize this infrastructure to create entrepreneurs and create startup, new startups, particularly new age startups? That also is a matter of consideration.
So thank you. I think, we want to open it up for questions. We've got 10 minutes. We've got a lot of hands raising. Your question, and then after that you.
My name is Deepa Sayal. I run a company for the last 8 years in Delhi, a small group of companies. I wanted to ask you, what is the kind of ecosystem that, what is the benefit that I have? Is there any benefit that I can run with the government and scale up to the next level? So what are the perks in the ecosystem being a woman entrepreneur that I can, whale? Any ideas? I don't know whether this is a subjective question or not, but I wanted to know because I'm still unaware after 8 years. Yeah.
I can attempt, but I haven't understood your question.
Okay, let me repeat. Can I say that again? I'm a woman entrepreneur based in India. I work with 5 geographies besides India. But I do not know what are the perks in India that I can avail being a woman entrepreneur. What are the add-ons that I have? What is the kind of support the government can give me? How can I associate with better programs? Some guidance. I don't know anything.
No, so I would say you're at a disadvantage. You're working in 4 other countries which may be better. And I think the perks and the enabling ecosystem here is still developing. So
that's kind of a disappointing answer because here we based last 8 years. And frankly, I do not know what are the positives that we have and how we can stand apart, because the women entrepreneurs in India is like really, really.
Well, all I can say is, India has a 1/6 of the world's population, so you have a huge market. And that, to my mind, is the customer revenue build-up that Sanjeev was talking about in the previous session. So I think that's a big advantage. But from a government or a policy or an ecosystem perspective, we have some way to go.
Yeah, and I think it's what possibly is the gentleman there. So wait till January and February. You'll have the new guidelines coming in, and there will be some. Definitely, there are a lot of benefits planned for entrepreneurs and specifically for women entrepreneurs. So,
all right. My question again is addressed to Padmaja, Ruparel. My name is Aubrey Aloysius. I head a startup called Lorraine Music Academy. I'm also involved in a venture which is a social venture that uses music, art and culture to impact the nation. My question is linked, and I'll phrase it in 2 separate questions. One is, you mentioned that in the US, an average investment by the HNIs or the angel network is about $500,000. Am I right? In India, what would that translate to? This year, I believe there are 50 investments that are happening. What is the average?
Average remains the same. We are still doing about 3 crores a round.
Per round?
Yeah.
And what would be the stake an average stake that would be taken by the angel?
We take significant minority.
Which would be roughly in what rate, just to help an entrepreneur exploring that possibility?
No, you're always welcome to explore. Exploring is always welcome, but typically we don't take more than 32%
Okay,
max.
fine. Now the second question
But
is...
we always, so let me just give the logic there because it's important. Again, investors do not want to run your company. Okay, what they're really doing is backing an entrepreneur. So they will always leave enough and more than enough for you to hold in the equity of the company so that you are not only incentivized, but you are the owner of the company, okay? So it will always be a significant minority if it's an investor coming in.
Sure.
And especially an investor who is empathetic to entrepreneurship.
Sure. And the second question is relating to...
Oh, I thought that was the second one.
No, linked to the first, broken up into 2. The second question is linked to another area of entrepreneurship, which is social entrepreneurship, or that may not be purely for profit, but impact society. Would the Indian Angel Network have there been investments?
We have invested in impact investments. We have about almost a dozen companies which are in that space, but they all have to be profitable. Mm-hmm. They have to at least have a plan to return monies to investors.
All right.
These are not for profits or grants or donation. Investment by definition means that you put in money and you get a return.
All right.
Sure.
Thank you.
So your question.
Yes. I'm sorry if I take, just to ask, I take 2 minutes. I have started my own footwear brand 2 years back along with my husband. So he handles totally the IT backend. So for the 2 years since we got married, we have invested each penny we had in our project. So my brand is like, I am totally socially connected. So we do a lot of donations every month for footwear only. And I source footwear, 40% of the footwear I source from the homes in the villages where people make shoe at home. Plus, I have recently shifted my warehousing to my own village, it's near Amritsar, so that I could generate more and more employment. And when I started my brand, like 1 year back, so I approached various banks, and even in the last, in the same summit, I was there, and I have met the people who were in the panel. So I have met a lot of people till now, and a lot of banks I have visited, but I never got any help from anyone. The first thing is people ask for the collateral from the, even from the women. So I don't have anything on my own name. And even I don't want to take help from any of my parents or relatives. So this is what I feel, this is the base. We are talking like very big things here. But many entrepreneurs are just like me who are suffering like anything. I have written lots of articles on LinkedIn. I have even published my book on Amazon. Means I am totally into telling people that what is actually the ground reality. Even people like me who are totally concerned about, who are too simple, who just started their journey from a village, who just started their journey just from a village and know the ground realities, who are totally generating the employment. You just visit my place, how many people are working. They are just 10th class pass, 12th pass, but we are training them to work with us. We are going to homes that people could make even 30 shoes every month, and I could source them and I could sell them to another person. So even I visited like ICICI, I visited UCO Bank, I visited PNB, I visited SBI. So I never got any help. Till now, 2 years, I and my husband, we are staying separately. He is in US, and we are totally funding our project with our own money.
Sure.
So I just want to know that and even my figures are increasing only. I am able to increase my sales month on month, but I know that.
So if I was to just put your question there, sorry to, I think you're looking at two things. One, you're running a business for the last.
Just I want to complete it. It's just one more sentence. So what I feel that our core team is very, just people, only I am the one who is working full time. So other people are like, they are in good companies at good designations they are working on. So what I feel that if we can do 1 crore, we can easily do 10 also. But we don't have enough finances to support us. So what do you think that should I keep on waiting for the best time to come, or I don't think so. I have sent an email to every website who is funding, every person. Just I don't, even anybody could read my book, I have mentioned the names even there. So many people told me that naam mat likho, tum fas jaoge.
So can,
I
so
might be
can
the
you-
absolutely wrong guy to be intervening in this. I don't think it's a question, but you're very sure that
Not a question.
you're very sure that it's not a capability issue.
Yes.
You're very sure about that.
Of
Because
course.
I'm just saying it as a normal person. I don't belong to this panel in any other regard. But I think very often what happens is that we confuse hard work and effort and reaching out to people and relentlessness as the only reason to get the money that we want. But that is not always the case. I'm saying it, I meet people like you in my industry all the time who say, sir, मैं हर producer के घर गया, हर director के पास गया, मैं 10 साल से बॉम्बे में बैठा हूँ, मैं 6 फुट लंबा हूँ, मैं ये करता हूँ, मैं ये करता हूँ, मैं ये करता हूँ, मेरे को कोई एक्टिव क्यों नहीं करने दे रहा है? I don't know. And I think most of the time, when it's not worked out for that long, it's better to just take a step back, meet your husband in Turkey, call him back from the US, sit back and think, maybe there's something you guys need to do that might be need to turn around. Maybe everyone else is not getting it. But if no one's getting it, I think it's just time for introspection, and it might take you further than you plan to go.
Okay, so I've got a good one here. So sorry, I'll have to move on to the next question, which is right there. So that was fairly insightful. Huh? By the way, you do belong here.
My name is Akhilesh. My question is, the forum was about enabling businesses. What are we leading to? What is the takeaway point? I'm not able to understand that.
So I think enabling businesses also, first we need to understand as to what are the roadblocks that are there. And I think the roadblocks, if they are fairly well defined, and of course this is a forum where you've heard from the various industry people, those roadblocks, how do they get addressed by government policy, which we're expecting that comes out in the next year. There's an entrepreneurs whole ecosystem and a policy that's going to come out in January. It's a way of putting that forth and saying that how do we overcome some of these hurdles, either through government policy or through collective understanding. So it's not maybe if it came across that we will have a magic wand to want to make everything work, I think that's not what the takeaway would be.
This group, what I take, we have gone into a little bit of disappointment that things are not enabling. Rather,
Sure.
we have to create energies that we all are entrepreneurs, we have to do something with.
Sure.
You all are successful people here sitting. With whatever situations we are in, we are still growing. So what is the takeaway in terms of?
So the takeaway is very simple to my mind. Okay, I think we are a bottoms-up economy, right? Unlike some other countries. And everybody who has made it one step ahead has happened in spite of policies not working. Let's just first acknowledge the fact that we as Indians have the best entrepreneurial genes that can be possible. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to do anything. 11 out of 68 companies, I'm just taking one small sector, right? 11 out of 68 unicorns of the world are bred in India, right? I think first let's acknowledge that. Number two is that we've got so many things that we've moved in the last 5 or 10 years that other countries are still aspiring to do. We have the best movies coming out. They are becoming multi-bagger grossers. I mean, I don't even know the numbers, so I'll not go that route. We are getting the best companies out of here. We are getting the best entrepreneurial or business talent who are heading global companies. Let's just acknowledge that, number one. The second takeaway for me is the fact, from this session at least for me, and when I was listening to Riyaaz and Vikas and Mr. Raheja and all of that, I think is the positivity of saying, yes, there is a problem, but how can we solve it? How can we engage with government? I'm 100%, each of them are sitting in different ministries and different regulators, whoever is relevant to your sectors, and sort of trying to solve that and trying to say what little tweaks, what little changes can we be. And the last takeaway for me, at least, is when I was listening to all of them to say, hey, yes, there are problems, but then what is entrepreneurship? Is actually to build businesses beyond those problems. And that's 3% of a population who become real entrepreneurs. And that is something I think is a takeaway to say it's very inspiring. If these people can do it in worse situations, the situation is actually improving and we can do much more.
Absolutely. And I think also knowing what the problems are, because if you know what the problems are,
I'm not left despondent at all. I'm very high.
Okay. So thank you very much. Thank you, panelists. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for your motivation.
Thank you so very much. I'd like to request all our panelists to please stay on with us for a couple of more minutes. And may I also take this opportunity to invite Ms. Deepa Tripathi from ED Edge on stage. Let's put our hands together for her. And let's also put our hands together for our moderator for making this such an interactive session and opening it to the audience as well. Once again, I'd like to thank you. I promise you great lunch, but let's put our hands together for our panelists truly. I'd like to thank each one of our panelists there, and all those of you who didn't get an opportunity to raise questions right here, you're more than welcome to do it offline during the networking lunch. Let's have you as a part of a group picture so that we can capture this moment. Gentlemen, may I request you to join us for a group picture?